Hey everyone, this is our very first episode in our new series, Plant Powered. My name's Brianna and I'm here with my friend Johanna.
Hi.
And there you go. We are both vegan copywriters and marketing experts working in the vegan movement. And we're having these conversations on the side anyway about what's going on, what the current events are, what's working, what's not. And we wanted to bring all of this to you guys and kind of open up the conversation and have a dialogue on what type of writing, marketing tactics, etc., and even just current events are happening in the movement, keep you guys up to date. So this is our first episode, our first go at recording and posting to LinkedIn. Be kind, it's going to be a little messy, but we're excited to continue with you guys. So if you have any questions that you want to see us cover in a future episode, please drop them in the comments or send us a message. We are happy to talk further about all this with you. For this first chat, we wanted to introduce ourselves, for those of you that don't know us, kind of give you a background on what we do, how we became vegan and got involved in the movement in the first place. And then we'll dive into a few little current events before we wrap up. Our goal is to keep these about 30, 40 minutes, and you can always speed it up. Johanna, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah. So first, thank you so much, Brie. Like that was an awesome introduction. You're like a pro at this. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So hi, I'm Johanna. I'm originally from Finland and currently dividing my time between Finland and Berlin, Germany. I'm a copywriter and marketer, like Brie mentioned, but essentially an animal rights activist at heart. That's the driving force in my life and has been ever since I was a kid. And yeah, we can talk about how we got into copywriting and marketing a little bit later. But right now, like in my work, I'm really passionate about using my skills to help vegan businesses grow and like other ethical businesses. And I think that's it in a nutshell. And what about you, Brie? Who are you?
My name is Brianna or Brie, and I live in Virginia in the US. Like Johanna, I love animals, longtime animal advocate, and currently surrounded by 2 dogs as I record this. Really came to veganism, through my passion for animals, and I'm excited to make a career out of helping nonprofit organizations that are working in the diet change movement, animal rights movement, and environmental movements as well. Making it a more compassionate and ethical world is what I'm all about. So yeah, Johanna, I know that we both found each other through the Copy Posse and taking Alex Catoni's courses, and we're both in her mentorship program, Rain. But why writing for you? What interested you about writing for the movement?
Yeah, so for me, it all goes back to childhood. Like I grew up in the countryside. Like all my grandparents were farmers, and actually my dad is still like he's retired, but he's farming. And like my parents worked in the food industry in a dairy or like creamery. I'm not sure like which one is the better word.
Yeah.
But I was really the odd one out since I was small. I started like I grew up helping around my grandparents' farm, and like for a long time the things I saw were normal to me because they were normal to everybody around me. But somehow the older I got, the more troubled I became by the things I saw, like such as like my grandparents mostly had dairy cows. So, for example, the calves being taken from their mothers and things like that. So, and it just yeah, the older I got, the more uncomfortable I became with it, and I stopped eating meat and later on became vegan. So that's kind of like one side of my story, and the other one is that I've always loved reading and writing since I was a kid. Like my elementary school was next to a library, so I spent all my afternoons and sometimes evenings there and read and wrote from a small age. And I really loved languages. So when I was, out of high school, I started studying English and translation at university. And that seemed like it just, was another passion of mine. And then all my free time I dedicated to activism. Like I basically spent my 20s, like over a decade as an activist, like trying my best to combine my like love for languages and writing and for animals. But then after working as a translator for quite a few years, I just got this feeling like I know I could do much more. Like as a translator, you're always conveying what somebody else has already written, and Finnish is a fairly small language. So I've had the pleasure to translate some really transformational books on animal ethics from English to Finnish. But there's just not enough of the kind of work maybe that I felt really passionate about. So I started this researching ways to improve as a writer, and that's how I got into copywriting. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then like long story short, I discovered Alex and the Copy Posse, and I was just amazed by her, somehow the ethos and her way of doing and the empathy and everything. So that's the short, long story. Yeah.
No, I love that. You hit on so much good stuff in there. One, I am so jealous that you are into languages and you're translating these important texts to other languages so they can be shared and the ideas can continue in other countries. And I think that's also cool about us doing these chats because we're both in different countries. And so we bring different perspectives, right? It's a global movement, a global issue. And so it's important to know what other countries are doing. I think that's so cool.
Totally. It's really languages open this like doors to different worlds and different ways of seeing things. I really love it. And how about for you? What is like, how did you get into writing or copywriting? What does it mean for you? Or
so I've been a creative kid, for as long as I can remember. My grandpa was a painter, and some of my best memories are sitting on his lap painting with him. And as I grew up and went through school, I kept the passion for animals. It became like more advocacy work, more intellectual work. I went to law school, became an attorney for the environment and animals. I lobbied on Capitol Hill for them, and saw how, at least in the US, our systems are not set up for animal protection, for environmental protection. There have been some significant wins. I'm not knocking what is happening and the good work that is continuing to be done, but it is in many ways very tentative and easily knocked down. I mean, unfortunately, even women's rights are being impacted. So trying to talk about animals having rights is like foreign concept, it seems, in this country sometimes. So we had a lot of great wins while I was with a nonprofit that saved wild horses in the legal space. It became harder and harder to come by, though. And so a lot of it became getting creative with language. I wanted to see how copywriting and getting back into the creative and thinking about messaging and different ways to bring some heavy topics to people could help missions and help make the change outside of those very rigid, restrictive systems that just weren't meant to help animals, right? So that's why I took the copywriting course with Alex. And I love what you said about it being like so empathetic forward, her teaching style and her writing style, because I think that translates really well to the movement that you and I are writing in. Really meeting people where they are, showing them a different way. It's an empathetic conversation that has to happen, so the bro sales tactics that we see in copywriting so often are not going to make waves in a movement that's talking about the culture around food and what health impacts and animal rights impacts and things like that. And so leading with empathy, I think, is so important. I'm just so glad that we both found Alex for that reason, right? And then like personally, I'd been a lifelong vegetarian. My mom was a vegetarian, and raised me that way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm amazed. That's quite rare.
It is quite rare,
Yeah.
especially for a 90s kid. Like when McDonald's was the big thing,
Yeah.
and going to McDonald's and being like, okay, cheese and bread, no
Yeah.
patty. Just it was always a struggle. It was always a struggle. But the more aware I became as I grew up and the more I worked in the movement, especially in law school, the different internships and fellowships that I had, getting a look at what we were fighting and what was actually happening. Like with the Wild Horse Organization, I stood on public lands and watched them brutally round up these horses, and cattle were just grazing casually to the side, and destroying the environment in the process.
Yeah.
And so seeing it firsthand, standing in these landscapes and really getting to know the issues, I was like, yeah, I can't do this work and have any amount of animal products. I just couldn't be a part of the system anymore. And so when I made the transition to really finding creative ways to meet people where they are with these issues and kind of make them more approachable, because they are
Yeah.
heavy, they are
Yeah.
hard. Copywriting felt right. Starting my business and really wanting to focus on nonprofits and kind of elevating nonprofit messaging from needing support and money to like telling these stories, putting someone where I was standing on public land and like, getting them to feel that ethos that really moved me. I think can be really powerful. And so in my opinion, and I know you agree with this, the movement needs more of these creative, empathetic writers, right, to tell these stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I just so strongly believe in the power of words, like whether spoken or written, to meet people like where they are and to change minds. And I think it took me a while to understand that actually in activism, because like I used to be really this, kind of, stereotypical activist, like going to demonstrations, like I'm like tabling like on the market, handing out leaf flyers, like organizing campaigns and trying to, persuade people to think different. Like marketing is trying to influence people, and when you do it ethically, you do it, like you meet people where they are. And in activism, it's the same. But thinking about myself, like in my 20s, like I wish I had some of the marketing understanding that I have now, because it would have made me a better activist. At the same time, people evolve, movements evolve, and now I'm so happy that I have this like background and strong mission, and now these new skills, how to try my best to understand the place where people are. And like you say, these are such heavy things. Like we want to think that we're good people, and most people would say they love animals. At the same time, our societies are based on this abuse and use, and nobody wants to face it. So like how to navigate that, I think marketing and hobby that's been
Yeah,
it's based on
absolutely.
human psychology and understanding people. It can, like I want to believe it can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And also building movements among people who are already interested, not just like trying to, I don't know, like convert or like persuade people like who are not ready yet or interested. So yeah,
Yeah. And I think too, you and I have both gone through our what is it? Entrepreneurship. There we go. Journeys and being an entrepreneur and kind of putting yourself out there and the struggles that come up and the introspection and self-work that you have to do is kind of similar to these broader movements, right? Because people have their like products they buy, choices they make, things that they feel comfortable with, and we're kind of challenging those, right, to get them to grow. And I think at least for me, going through the entrepreneurship journey too has kind of informed more compassion in my writing for people
Yeah.
and approaching them with these choices, because I know I'm not the same person a year ago. I've really had to consider those like personal boundaries. I'm curious, do you feel like entrepreneurship kind of informed the way you write for the movement too, and your clients?
That's a good question. Like honestly, I'm not sure if I've ever like I really love the way that you phrased it, because it's so much true. Like it's having a business and being a business owner, it's so much like it's first and foremost about like growing as a person, and also like when like what you mentioned about like changing like as an individual, like how you see animals, for example, or the food you eat, it's also about change. So I actually never thought about it like that, but I love the way you put it. But I guess it informs my writing. I think like like becoming a copywriter and understanding that empathy is really like trying to put yourself in another person's like shoes or boots as well as possible, that's like the key to everything. So I guess it's the same thing kind of. But yeah, I'm not sure I have the like best answer here. I need to think about it a little bit more.
I think you captured it for sure. And you bring up an interesting point too. At least in my conversations with nonprofit leaders, they're more inclined to work with someone like me who's in the movement, who is part of the movement and understands the empathy of animals.
Yeah.
And the good we're trying to do. Have you found it something similar? Like when you're talking to people and they know you're vegan, it's like a bonus, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I gotta say that until now, most of the work I've done has come through like my connections, like my background in the movement. So a lot of the people know that I'm very passionate about it and know this. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to meeting people who I don't know very well yet or at all, and helping them and seeing how they respond to that. But yeah, for me, in work, I feel like my connections have really brought a lot of work. So that's my experience so far.
Yeah, and it's like we understand,
and that brings like trust also. Like they know they can trust me, and I know like what I'm doing, and that I deeply care also about the work. It's not just work.
Yeah, it builds that trust. It shows that you get it. You understand their customer avatar really well. You might be their customer avatar. Yeah, it's really cool. I know we also wanted to kind of touch on some stuff that's happening in the movement too. Do you want to start us off? I know you want to talk about what is it, cultured meats?
Yeah. So yeah, we had the idea to kind of talk a little bit about what we're excited about, like what's going on in this sphere or world that is very broad. So I was thinking about like one of the most kind of meaningful or transformative experiences for me in the last, I don't know, half a year has been visiting this or going to this new food conference that happened here in Berlin, where I'm at, last autumn, so September. And it was like this 2-day gathering bringing in like also activists, but mostly business owners and startup founders, like people who are passionate about building and or like fixing the food system we have and taking animals off of our plates. And it was just 2 days of this mind-blowing in like knowledge. I thought I know a lot, and I know quite a bit. I've been vegan for over 20 years, so like I know what's going on. But especially this cultured meat and things like, I even have to check the word here, precision fermentation, like all this, like I'm so excited about how the food system and the food we're eating is changing like so rapidly, and I had no idea about this because I hadn't been so active in this movement. So I hope it makes sense what I'm saying here. But for example, like the future of dairy, so this event was like 2 days, and it will happen this year again. One day was focused on the alternative, like meat alternatives, and the other one on dairy alternatives. So for example, I had no idea that we're so close to having, this might be that it's happening in the States already, because the regulation in the EU is much more strict. So that there are these precision fermentation companies that are producing like milk products that are identical, like whey, for example, they're identical to like their animal counterparts, but using yeast and these like fermentation products, and they're producing like cheese and yogurt and milk, and apparently the taste is exactly the same, and the texture and the mouthfeel, but they're like in Europe, they're still waiting to get their permission. So as far as I know, things or products aren't on the market yet. But in the States and in Asia, things are happening much faster.
Wow,
So
that's
I'm really,
cool.
I'm so fascinated by
like,
this.
Can I ask you a question? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about this. So when you say it's like mouth feels the same, tastes the same. So yeah, say more about that. So it would be easier for someone to make the swap, I guess, because they're basically getting the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's kind of a couple of different ways to go about it. So there are these companies producing this, like basically milk proteins that you can use for different kinds of milk or alternative milk products. And they don't use any animals, like in the product. It's like yeast and some other, it's all like secret, like all the details. But in these like big kind of dairy looking production facilities, and so what I'm trying to say here is that, so on the one hand, maybe at some point there will be products that are 100% produced like this, but what's most likely to happen first is that these companies will collaborate with like traditional like dairy companies and mix that. It's like hot, like for example, like I don't know, soy yogurt, or here we have a lot of like oat yogurt, that the flavor and texture and everything, because when they add these new products, it becomes much more like, like dairy yogurt, and people are much more likely to try it and like it, because it's much, these proteins make it so much more similar. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
So different companies kind of have I actually wrote a couple of articles about the event and interviewed some of the founders. So it's like different companies have, some companies want to collaborate with dairy like factories, some want to come out with their own like fermented cheese product, build their own brand, and some want to collaborate with other companies in the same field. So it's going to be very interesting to see like what exactly comes to the supermarket shelf, and when, what it's going to taste like. So I'm excited about it.
I want to know about the marketing too, like how are they going to talk about it to the consumer? Because like my friends that aren't vegan, but they're making more plant forward choices, let's say, it always comes down to texture, and then taste. And so that's so interesting. I wonder what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, I have some, like, maybe we can do another episode on this, because it's a broad topic, but it is very interesting, and also like how much thinking, from a marketing perspective, because there are so many consumer objections to these new products, and how overcoming those is like key to making it and winning people over. So I'm happy to talk more about that.
I could listen to you talk about it all day for sure. That's really cool. Thanks for bringing that story forward. And it kind of perfectly into the one that I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about, because you're talking about oat milk, you're talking about the alternatives to dairy. One of the organizations I work for, I'm actually full-time as their marketing manager, is called the Better Food Foundation in the US. And one of the campaigns that they're running through their campaign hub, Default Veg, is an oat milk by default campaign, and it's targeted at coffee drinkers and coffee shops, because I'm sure it sounded like there were some oat milk opportunities for you as well in your country, and I prefer oat milk in my coffee.
Same.
It's just creamy, right?
Yeah.
But their point is that it's the more environmentally sustainable version, and it's the more inclusive version of an alternative to dairy. So I just think it's so cool when you talk about inclusivity and how broad the plant forward movement can be. Like, we're not just talking about replacements and animal welfare here. We're talking about like bringing cultures and communities together and letting people feel seen, because I'm not lactose intolerant. I didn't think about that, but like someone that's lactose intolerant might not be vegan, but they're still paying the surcharge at the coffee shop because they have to get oat milk instead, right? And oat milk is free of the top 12 allergens. It uses less water, less land, and it emits 3 times less carbon emissions than dairy milk. I mean, long term, and by the way, we've established it tastes really great in coffee. So baristas also say that it performs like dairy milk as far as like latte art and making a great latte. So it just seems like a no-brainer, if you will, to make it the default option. We're not taking anybody's ability to choose away. We're just making it the default so that like those people that have those allergens or want to make a more sustainable choice have that ability without having to pay more. And what we're seeing is when these pilot projects happen, by making something the default, more people are likely to use it, right? And especially when there's no surcharge. And so you get that environmental kickback, if you will, without having to take things away or make people think like they're missing out on something, or that freedom to choose, because all the options are still there. So I just think their default campaign is such a creative way to like meet people where they are, kind of bring them along and show them like it's not as scary as it sounds. And I think it's cool too that this month in San Diego, the University of San Diego is doing the first US-based university pilot. We've only seen this abroad, and kudos to you guys across the sea there, but we're finally seeing it in the US, and I'm just so excited about that. And I hope more universities, more coffee shops start to adopt it, because we have seen a few coffee shops that this was our first university like to take it on. So Gen Z is definitely leading the charge here for sure, and I'm here for it. I'm so happy about it. But it sounds like you're already an oat milk fan, so I don't need to convert.
Like my dad. It's my dog, poor thing, coughing on the background. So my dad is actually an oat farmer. Unfortunately, I think it's like animal feed, probably, like where it ends up. But like I have a very like strong relationship with oat, and anyways, like this might be an interesting conversation on its own, like the status of oat, like across, on your side of the Atlantic, because in Europe it's been around for such a long time, and like oat products are so the norm. And I've been drinking oatmeal with my coffee since like, I don't know, early 2000 or something. So
we're a little slower, but we're catching up. We're catching up.
You're fat, but you're like ahead with some like much more well, I don't want to say important things, but for example, with this regulation, when it comes to like these kinds of like cultivated meat or these novel technology is. So apparently things are happening so much faster in the States. So yeah, we both, every coin has, two sides though.
Yeah, but then too, like it might be being manufactured faster, but I can guarantee you that there are Americans that are like, that's lab grown. I don't want to eat that.
Yeah.
I think we still have a little ways to go, depending on the target audience, of course, and we can take our marketing caps off for a second. But I think there's still some conversations that need to be had to bring people along to that, at least on our side. Yeah, I don't know that it even though it's being produced, I don't know that it's like friendly yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to the day that it is.
Cool.
This was such a great conversation, and I know we
Yeah.
want to kind of keep it 30-40 minutes,
Yeah.
so we can go ahead and wrap. But I do want to stress again, if you guys have any questions on what we brought up today, our personal stories, or you saw a new story that you want us to chat more about on the next one, we're trying to do these on the third Thursday every month. Life happens. We might miss a month, we might be late, but we're here for you guys, and we want to continue the conversation and really make this a community thing. So please do reach out, comment on this video, what have you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. And yeah, don't be a stranger. We love hearing from you and your feedback. Should we share links before we go,
Oh yeah, I'll put them in the caption for
Yeah.
sure. And we'll cross tag each other too. So if you're on Johanna's network or my network and you want to follow the other one, we'll make that easy for you guys, so you know how to contact us, for sure. Great idea. All right.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye for now.